Some people insist that only the destination matters. I say the journey has bickies for the party to enjoy. G'day mates and fellow adventurers, my name is Mordecai. An aspect to playing D&D at high levels prior to the OGL 1.1 situation, which ravaged the community more than the next ancient demon WotC wishes to unleash upon an unsuspecting populace, is the feeling of a group power fantasy where powerful characters beat down on villains intent on wreaking havoc. And part of that appeal was access to the high-level abilities for each of the classes, which in turn rewarded characters for sticking to their respective class. Part of what makes high-level play appealing is the journey bickies the characters go through in order to acquire those abilities. Giving challenges that can easily topple the party a burl and making steady progress is extremely satisfying. And so, the aspiring Mary Sue Enthusiast would seek to cheapen that experience by already being powerful enough to trivialize those challenges. Especially if they can get away with being granted those godlike powers by the Game Master. Before we get started with the story for the video, if I get to 1000 subs before the end of 2023, I am planning on covering an RPG story which predates the subreddit and contains one of the most infamous characters in all of broader tabletop role-playing game history. Let's delve into the often terrifying world of r/RPG-Horror-Stories. Today's narrative is a two-parter, with the first part titled DM Secretly Gives Wife God-Tier Stats, and is written by user Non-Core Nova. So, last week I showed up to the first session of this new campaign, which I was pretty excited about, as it was my first time playing a cleric. There were two other players, a rather happy-go-lucky dude I'd played with before, who loves funny and wacky characters, this time playing a wizard, and the DM's wife, who seemed relatively experienced with D&D, playing a Paladin Warlock multi-class. The campaign itself was a homebrewed campaign, made by the DM, and has loose Norse mythology links, and I was interested in exploring that aspect. The DM is also rather loosey-goosey with the character building aspect, so he said it was okay for me to take a feat and have an uncommon magic item as we started at level 3. The first session was pretty decent, a typical dungeon crawler feel as we made our way through a haunted mansion, stumbling into a handful of mimics and strange shadow creatures, so it was combat intensive. But I began to have my suspicions about the Paladin. They always seemed to roll exceptionally high no matter what the role, at least for a level 3 character, and always came first in initiative. Overall though, it was a good session, and we discussed creating a campaign on D&D Beyond to keep track of homebrew magic items. We also leveled up at the end of that session. The second session, however, began by getting weirder. After we had been locked in a jail cell following the events of last session, Loki himself showed up, introducing himself as the Paladin's dad. I thought, hey, that's pretty cool. The daughter of Loki trying to make her way in the world honestly is a cool character concept. The latter half of the session became combat intensive as well, as we ran into a large group of lycanthropic bandits. As combat went on, however, my suspicions grew, as I counted the damage this paladin took through the whole fight before healing, almost tanking 60 points of damage at level 4? Again, she was also top of initiative nearly every fight. So after that session, I got home and I debated doing something, and whether or not that something was okay to do, or if I was just being untrusting. But I did it anyway. I went on to D&D Beyond and looked at her character sheet, and to my unsurprised horror, her lowest ability score was 18. Her lowest. This Paladin Warlock had a 20 in Strength, 28 in Dex, resulting in a +9 modifier, 23 in Con, +6, hence the extra health, 19 on Intelligence, 18 on Wisdom, and 27 on Charisma? Now, I don't know what to do. Should I confront the situation? Should I just leave the group? I really don't know. In summary, the DM decides that his wife's standard array should be 18, 28, 23, 19, 18, and 26. Please advise... And that's where part 1 ends. Something that draws a lot of new players to systems such as Dungeons & Dragons is the inherent group power fantasy aspects when you arrive at higher levels as a party. There is a satisfaction to playing a powerful character in a group of other powerful blokes as you curb stomp an ancient demon into non-existence because it was threatening the various realms with evil machinations. The problem, however, is that the wife is being granted the power of a Mary Sue, a main character, which is way more powerful than the rest of the party and can topple that ancient demon merely by existing. To me, this is something that if I were granted it, I would not find it fun nor exciting, and this is also where the idea of a group power fantasy falls apart. The party is merely level 4, out of 20, and on top of that, her character has been blessed with a form of divine sanctity. Put simply, it was only a matter of when, and not if, a player in this group would realise that something was clearly wrong. The appearance of a deity in their anointment of their daughter in front of the group was arguably the biggest red flag that could be hoisted to showcase that favouritism. Now, favouritism can be reasonable. It can result in a game that's fun for everyone, provided that the spotlight is shared around evenly. That was never going to happen with the overpowered bloke in the party stealing that spotlight. The part which stings the most with regards to the crook stats is that there wouldn't be a problem if everyone in the party had similarly inflated stats, or if the entire group had agreed to have such a power gamer in the group from the tee off. So let's now talk about how we can... Wait, what's happening here? Oh, it's just an arcane storm. I'd rather go kickboxing with a bunch of kangaroos than go report this, but reporting oddities such as these is part of my yakka. I have to wonder what kind of bloke the Institute will send to look into this properly. Okay, where was I? Ah, right. So, my advice for a player who finds themselves in this situation would be to ask the other players who are not being given the Mary Sue treatment if they've noticed anything unusual, and if the unusual activity is making the game less fun overall. Then discuss with them what's been happening, and see if, as a group, you can talk to the GM about getting the problem fixed. And if the GM refuses to fix the problem in any meaningful capacity, then it might be time to find a new group to play with. That's preferable to ear-bashing them. Whilst I think my advice would be helpful to consider before making a decision about how to go forward, let's find out how this particular situation ended for the poster of the story. The second part of the story is titled, DM Secretly Gives Wife God Tier Stats, Part 2. Hello all. I got a lot more interaction on the first part of this post than I expected, with an overwhelmingly large amount of people offering amazing advice from multiple perspectives. For reference, the last post explained a DM of a campaign I joined had given his wife, a paladin, ability scores ranging from 18 to 28 at level 4. He was frequently throwing AC 25 enemies at us that only she could hit. This wasn't found out until after I had snooped on her character sheet. Many people suggested running, many suggested talking to the DM about it, and many people said it was a lost cause. But the one that helped the most was a user who suggested confronting the situation in front of the group, so the DM couldn't make me out to be the bad guy in front of the other players. I'm still not mad at these people, I'm not angry, I just don't have the level of trust to continue playing. I tried asking around to see if I could find a replacement player before confronting this situation, but no one responded. To save what could become a shouting match, I opted to do this over the group chat we have. What follows is the conversation that was had. Good morning. I just wanted to let you know with a little bit of an advance, but I don't think I want to continue playing this campaign. I want to make it clear though, that it's not anyone's fault. It's just between the choices made for balancing for this campaign and the type of character I want to play that I do not think it will work out. I find the combat encounters from last week to be heavily unbalanced between the NPCs with literally CR 30 level strength and player characters with stats higher than a typical level 20 character at level 4, and fighting enemies at level 4 with ACs of CR20 plus creatures, I feel like I'm unable to really contribute. Either I stack myself up with extra buffy stats, which destroys my character concept and chance of any progression, or I'm unable to land attacks or contribute to any story points with skill checks. The lack of balance between player stats, especially the high 27 plus and minimum of 18 ability scores, basically makes it so that there's literally no point in anyone rolling skill checks apart from that PC. I feel like there was perhaps some miscommunication regarding the character creation, balancing, and overall themes of this campaign. Good luck with your game, I really hope you have fun. Sorry for the inconvenience. And with that, I left the group. The GM re-added me to the group, and then had this to say. If we start it again, I will bring the AC down to a manageable level for the hit dice. Do the levels as normal rolls, and not buff if you guys don't need or want to. You can base the stats on the player's handbook. I appreciate the heads up, all I need is feedback to know when to change things. It's not entirely the point. I'm a little disheartened we played 2 sessions without anyone letting me know one player was, for lack of a better word, overpowered. It's not entirely about the lack of balance, but also the lack of forthrightness in sharing game-defining information with all of the players. Unfortunately, from my perspective, having one player with beyond endgame stats, whilst other players don't, breaks trust. And I'm not sure I feel comfortable being part of a campaign after that. We are making changes to the characters, and the Strength 30 NPC was more meant as occasional backup, and the Paladin has changed her stat buffs. And I appreciate your frustration. I'd rather everyone enjoys themselves and lets me know if things need changing. And NPC was meant to start off as a mount, plus it's my first time running a campaign. Is it me that caused this? My stats are unbuffed and all other players can check them. She then sends her new fair stats, which are 17, 17, 3 18s, and a 19. Look, I feel you're missing my point. I know it can be fixed by reducing Paladin stats, and by making changes. It's just one of those situations where, you know, we've played 2 sessions without being told that one of the PCs was significantly buffed compared to everyone else. Even what it's been reduced to with a lowest score of 17 is still higher than you'd expect at level 15, let alone level 4. But the numerical values and balance issues aren't the problem here, because you can do a campaign where everyone plays with overpowered ability scores. The problem lies with not explaining the situation. This wouldn't have been addressed if I hadn't had snooped on the character sheet for Paladin. There'd have been even more sessions without it being explained that one player's scores are significantly higher. The problem then becomes you can physically, numerically fix the issue. But after 2 sessions, and who knows how many more if I hadn't found out, of this huge aspect of the game going unaddressed, it becomes hard to then continue playing because there could be other stuff that is simply being hidden or not addressed. The trust is broken for me, and I'm not sure what to do about that. I did explain I was going to allow high modifiers on ability scores as long as they were applicable to character type in class, but I'm not kicking Paladin off the campaign. That's not what I suggested at all. There's a difference between high modifiers and 28 and 27 being the highest 2 scores. And saying applicable to character type is undermining the situation here. Had it been 1 ability score, I'd have accepted it. Daughter of Loki having a super high charisma makes sense for the character. Having super high everything is unbalanced and unfair. But please, I haven't suggested kicking anyone off the campaign, nor would I. I'm just explaining why I no longer wish to be part of the campaign. And with that, the DM removed me from the group. So, overall, I ended up leaving the campaign. I hope you guys think the things I was pointing out were fair. There's a huge difference between being a new DM and the level of unbalance that was in this game. They didn't seem to understand the stats weren't the problem, but the lack of transparency surrounding them. Thanks for all of the help. This is an amazing community. A small update, I've received several messages from a few mutuals who also play D&D at the same game shop, from outside of the campaign. Apparently, I don't understand how to balance the game, and was constantly trying to get his wife kicked out, and was trying too hard to be the main character, amongst other stuff. Luckily, thanks to some great advice from some users here, I had many screenshots to back myself up. In summary, I confronted the DM and their wife in group chat about favoritism. The DM suggested restarting the campaign, with their wife having changed her stats to a totally balanced pair of 17s, 3 18s, and a 19. The DM then suggested I was trying to get his wife kicked out of the group, and then kicked me from the chat when I pointed out that I hadn't said that at all. And that's where the story ends. To add on to what the poster said towards the end of the story, there is a difference between being a new bloke who seemingly doesn't know any better, and being a new GM who plays favourites with their significant other, gaslights other people out in a more public setting in order to weaponize them against the poster, and uses a strawman argument in order to deal with a player who just wanted some transparency and genuine fairness amongst the players. After all, those revised stats were still putting the significant other in a position of extreme advantage over the other players. I have to question whether or not the GM was actually new considering the amount of buffing he gave enemies so that only his wife's Mary Sue could hit them. It's also unclear as to whether or not the other players at the table protested the GM's rulings, but considering that it doesn't appear as though they have defended the poster in any manner from the gaslighting of the store afterwards, they may have been perfectly okay with the GM playing favourites. At least the poster was able to prove their innocence with the screenshots of the conversation that led to the poster getting kicked from the game. Considering how the GM immediately sprung into a strawman argument where he went on the defensive, the situation may have been one of those few walkabout causes. Not every story has a happy ending. This one was definitely more grey. If anything further has happened in the store, there hasn't been any further follow-up afterwards. Whilst it is rather unfortunate that the problem was unable to be resolved, a potential consideration for other blokes in a similar position would be to think about how to start the conversation where the GM has been playing favourites in this manner. Perhaps starting the message talking about trust issues having arisen, and why there is no trust, might yield better results compared to opening up with just the stat blocks and game mechanics spiel. I'll end this off with a ripper quote that goes, "Trust which takes months to build only takes seconds to annihilate." Thank you for watching the video. If you like my content and want to see more or wish to support the channel, please hit the subscribe button and maybe leave the video a like. It's free to do, and every bit of support is highly appreciated. Again, thank you for watching, and I shall see you all next time.